My sister slapped me in a store for buying a ring with my own money. Then a stranger crushed her hand, snarling, "Lay one finger on my wife and see what happens." She shook in terror. The sound of the slap landed so hard it actually rang through the high-end jewelry store like a gunshot. A velvet tray of engagement rings clinked against the glass counter. Someone a few feet away whispered, "Oh my God." My sister, Stella, did not lower her hand. She stood there, breathing heavily, her perfectly manicured nails hovering just inches from my stinging face. She leaned closer, her expensive perfume wrapping around me like a chokehold, and she said through her teeth, "You do not get to buy this before my engagement party. My name is Nadine. I am 32 years old. I am the younger sister, the quiet one, the one everyone in the family assumes will fold first." If you looked at us side by side, you would see the story immediately. Stella is 34, luminous, loud, and demanding. She takes up all the oxygen in any room she enters. I have always been the shadow, the one holding her coat, paying her tab, and apologizing to the people she offends. For 32 years, my role in the family dynamic was fixed. I was the emotional sponge and the financial safety net. I was the scapegoat, and she was the golden child. When that slap echoed through the room, my brain did what it had been trained to do since childhood. It froze. Psychologists call it the trauma response. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I had spent my entire life fawning. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to lower my eyes, to apologize to Stella, to tell the horrified sales clerk that it was just a misunderstanding, to smooth things over. That was my job. Keeping the peace meant shrinking myself so small that I practically disappeared. But as I tasted the faint metallic flavor of blood inside my cheek, something completely unfamiliar stirred in my chest. It was not fear. It was not submission. It was a cold, sharp, terrifying realization that this woman, my own flesh and blood, did not view me as a human being. She viewed me as property. And property does not get to have shiny things. To understand why I stood there with a burning cheek instead of hitting her back immediately, you have to understand the architecture of our childhood. Our mother was the kind of woman who treated love like a limited resource. There was only so much to go around, and Stella always got the lion's share. Stella was sensitive, my mother would say. Stella needs more support. Stella has a delicate disposition. I remember being 19 years old. I was working 2 grueling waitress jobs, coming home at 2 in the morning smelling like stale French fries and bleach. I saved every single dollar I made in a shoebox under my bed. I was exhausted, but I was proud. After 9 months, I finally bought a used Honda Civic. It was 10 years old, the paint was chipping, but it was mine. It was my ticket to independence. 2 weeks after I bought it, Stella wrecked her own car because she was texting while driving. She came crying to our mother, wailing that she would lose her prestigious, unpaid summer internship if she did not have a vehicle. I came home from my shift to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table, her hands folded. She looked at me with those pleading, guilt-tripping eyes and said, "Nadine, your sister needs your car. You can take the bus to the diner, it is only 3 miles. Stella's internship is her whole future. You need to be a supportive sister." When I tried to say no, the tears started. The accusations flew. I was called selfish, heartless, jealous of Stella's success. After 3 days of relentless emotional manipulation from both of them, I handed over the keys. Stella took my car, ruined the transmission 6 months later, and never once said thank you. That was the blueprint of my life. I was conditioned to believe that my boundaries were acts of aggression against the family. I was taught that my worth was entirely dependent on how useful I could be to Stella. And my usefulness only increased when Stella met Preston. Preston is 35, handsome, and born into the kind of old money that does not need to flash designer logos to prove it exists. His family owns real estate across half the state. When Stella set her sights on him, she completely morphed her personality. Suddenly, my loud, drama-obsessed sister was a demure, charity-loving art enthusiast. She mirrored Preston's interests perfectly. It was a masterclass in behavioral manipulation. But maintaining the illusion of being a sophisticated, high society woman is incredibly expensive. That is where I came in. Preston believed Stella was an independent, successful consultant. In reality, she was drowning in credit card debt and barely holding down a part-time job. So, the financial bleeding began. It started small. A text message asking for $200 to cover her portion of a fancy dinner with Preston's parents because she left her purse at home. Then it escalated. $500 for a designer dress she absolutely had to wear to a country club gala. Then came the emergency rent payments. I transferred thousands of dollars to her over 3 years, always under the promise that she would pay me back as soon as her big consulting contract came through. It never did. I funded the fake persona that Preston fell in love with. I paid for the Botox, the expensive highlights, the luxury gym memberships so she could happen to bump into Preston's wealthy friends. Every time I hesitated, Stella would deploy the ultimate weapon. She would threaten to tell our mother I was abandoning her. Or worse, she would tell me that if she married Preston, our whole family would be set for life. She convinced me that I was making an investment in our collective future. She was the star, and I was just the underpaid stagehand keeping the lights on. But stagehands eventually get tired of the dark. Which brings us back to the present, and the reason I was standing in that jewelry store on a rainy Saturday afternoon. 2 days prior, I had received a massive promotion at my accounting firm. It came with a title change and a salary bump that finally meant I did not have to check my bank balance before buying groceries. For the first time in my 32 years of existence, I decided to do something entirely for myself. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell Stella. I went downtown to the finest jeweler in the city. I spent an hour looking at the glass cases until I found it. A delicate, vintage-inspired diamond pendant on a white gold chain. It cost $2,000. I pulled out my debit card, feeling a rush of adrenaline and pride that I had never experienced before. I earned this, I told myself. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. This was mine. I was standing beneath the warm showroom lights, waiting for the clerk to wrap the velvet box, when the front door chimed. I did not turn around until I heard the sharp, aggressive clicking of Stella's heels on the marble floor. I still do not know how she found me. Maybe it was the shared location app our mother insisted we keep on our phones for safety, or maybe she had seen my car parked outside. But there she was. Her face was flushed with anger, her eyes locked onto the small black box in my hands. She marched right up to me, completely ignoring the wealthy patrons browsing nearby. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice tight and loud enough to make heads turn. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. "I am buying a gift for myself," I said, "to celebrate my promotion." Stella looked at the box, then looked at me as if I had just confessed to a crime. "Are you out of your mind?" she hissed. "My engagement party is in exactly 3 weeks. You know I am tapped out right now. Preston's family is expecting a lavish event, and I still need $3,000 to cover the floral arrangements. You are supposed to be helping me, and instead, you are wasting money on stupid jewelry for yourself?" She reached out and tried to snatch the box from my hands. I stepped back, clutching it tightly to my chest. "No, Stella. Not this time. This is my money. I earned it." Stella's mask completely slipped. The sophisticated, sweet fiancé vanished, replaced by the vicious bully I grew up with. "You selfish little brat," she snarled. "You do not get to wear something like that to my party. You are just trying to upstage me. You always want what I have. You are going to return that right now, and you are going to wire me the cash. You do not know your place." I looked her dead in the eyes. And for the first time in my life, I said the word that shattered our entire dynamic. "No." That was when she hit me. It was not a gentle push. It was a full, sweeping strike across my left cheek. The crack echoed, silencing the entire store. The sales clerk let out a gasp and ducked slightly behind the register. The pain flared hot and sudden, but it was nothing compared to the absolute shock. Stella stood there, chest heaving, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to apologize for making her so angry. She actually raised her hand again, stepping forward to grab the jewelry box by force. Before her hand could make contact with my skin a second time, a shadow moved from the watch counter to my right. It happened so fast I barely registered the motion. A man stepped firmly between us. He was tall, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that exuded quiet, absolute authority. He reached out and caught Stella's raised wrist midair. He did not just hold her arm. His fingers clamped down like a steel vise. I watched the blood drain from Stella's knuckles as he crushed her hand with terrifying precision. He pulled her slightly downward, breaking her posture, forcing her to look up into his face. He was about 38 years old, with eyes as cold and dark as a winter ocean. "Lay one finger on my wife and see what happens," he snarled. His voice was low, gravelly, and vibrating with an intensity that sucked the air out of the room. It was not a shout. It was a promise of absolute destruction. Stella froze. Her face went from flushed red to a sickly, pale white in a matter of seconds. The arrogance melted off her features, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. She tried to pull her arm back, but the man did not budge an inch. His grip was unyielding. "Wife," Stella stammered, her voice shaking violently. No, you do not understand. She is my sister. We are sisters." I was just. "You struck her," the man interrupted, his tone chillingly calm. "In public. Over a necklace. You will apologize to her right now, or I will have the security guards drag you out of here and press assault charges." Stella's knees literally began to tremble. I could see her whole body shaking. She looked around, realizing that everyone in the store, including the security guard by the door, was watching her with utter disgust. She looked at me, and for the first time in 32 years, I saw fear in her eyes when she looked at her younger sister. "I am sorry," she choked out, barely a whisper. The man released her wrist with a flick of disgust, as if she were something filthy he had accidentally touched. "Get out," he commanded. Stella practically stumbled over her own feet as she turned and ran out of the store, the glass doors sliding shut behind her. The heavy silence rushed back in. My heart was pounding frantically against my ribs. I turned to the man, my old habits flaring up instantly. "I am so sorry," I blurted out. "I am sorry you had to deal with that." The man turned to me, and the dangerous, cold look in his eyes vanished completely. He looked at my bruised cheek, and his expression softened into something that made my chest ache. "Never apologize for someone else's cruelty," he said quietly. "Ever. If you are enjoying this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us what city you are watching from. Every single comment helps this video reach more people who might need to hear this. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to the story." I drove back to my apartment in complete silence. I did not turn on the radio. I just gripped the steering wheel, replaying the scene over and over in my head. When I finally walked through my front door, I dropped my keys on the counter, walked straight into the bathroom, and flicked on the harsh fluorescent light. I leaned over the sink and stared at my reflection. There was a faint red handprint blossoming across my left cheek, swelling slightly near the cheekbone. Normally, a younger version of me would have collapsed onto the bathroom floor and sobbed until my lungs burned. I would have rationalized it. I would have told myself that Stella was just under a lot of stress with the wedding planning. I would have blamed myself for provoking her. But as I touched the bruised skin, there were no tears. There was only a profound, freezing clarity. The man in the store, the stranger who had claimed me as his wife just to protect me, had broken the spell. He had shown me what a normal human reaction to abuse looked like. Stella had struck me because she believed she owned me. And the terrifying truth was, if I did nothing, she would be right. If I just iced my face and went to sleep, the cycle would continue. She would marry Preston, use his money to boost her ego, and continue draining my spirit until there was nothing left of me. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of ice water, and sat at my small dining table. I realized something crucial in that moment. If I exploded in anger, if I called her and screamed, she would instantly spin the narrative. She would cry to our mother, she would cry to Preston, and she would frame me as the unstable, jealous sister who was trying to ruin her happiness. Narcissists always rely on your emotional reaction to paint themselves as the victim. So, I decided I was not going to give her a reaction. I was going to give her a reckoning. The very next morning, my phone started buzzing at 7 a.m. I looked at the screen. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, a text came through. Nadine, answer your phone right now. Your sister is inconsolable. I cannot believe you would have some thug physically assault her in public. You need to fix this before Preston finds out. I stared at the message, letting out a dry, humorless laugh. There it was. The smear campaign. The flying monkeys had been deployed. In behavioral psychology, a flying monkey is someone the narcissist manipulates into doing their dirty work, spreading lies to isolate the victim. Stella had completely rewritten reality. She had conveniently left out the part where she tracked me down, demanded my money, and slapped me across the face. She had framed herself as a terrified victim of my imaginary, violent boyfriend. My phone rang again. This time, I picked it up. Before I could even say hello, my mother's voice shrieked through the speaker. Nadine, what is wrong with you? Stella has bruises on her wrist. She is terrified. She said you rubbed some gaudy diamond in her face just to make her feel bad about the wedding budget, and then your crazy boyfriend attacked her. I let her yell for 2 full minutes. I listened to the frantic defense of the golden child. When she finally paused to take a breath, she delivered the ultimatum. You are going to call Stella right now and beg for her forgiveness. And since you clearly have money to burn on diamonds, you are going to transfer $5,000 to her wedding account to compensate for the emotional distress you caused. If you do not do this, you are not welcome at the engagement party, and you are not welcome in this family. I held the phone to my ear, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. The system was completely, irreparably broken. There was no reasoning with delusion. I will handle it, Mom, I said quietly, my voice perfectly flat. And then I hung up. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I cracked my knuckles, opened a fresh digital folder, and named it the truth. I spent the next 9 hours doing forensic accounting on my own life. I logged into my bank portals. I went back 5 years. I downloaded every single bank statement, highlighting every transfer I had ever made to Stella's account. There were dozens of them. $500 here for rent. $300 there for groceries. $2,000 to cover her credit card bill so her score would not tank right before she moved into a luxury apartment she could not afford. Then I opened the mobile payment apps. This is where it got really damning. Stella was sloppy. She used the memo lines to make demands. Emergency car repair, please do not tell Mom. Need cash for Preston's anniversary gift, will pay you back next week. The total amount of money she had extracted from me over half a decade was well over $30,000. I had funded her entire fake lifestyle. But financial records were not enough. I needed behavioral evidence. I needed to prove who she really was behind closed doors. I synced my old cloud backups and started digging through years of text messages and voice notes. Stella loved leaving voice notes when she was drunk or angry. It did not take long to find the goldmine. I found a voice note from 6 months ago, right after she and Preston had attended a dinner with his wealthy, conservative family. I clicked play. Stella's voice filled my quiet apartment, slurred and dripping with venom. Oh my God, Nadine, Preston's mother is so painfully boring. She talked about antique rugs for an hour. These people are so stiff. But whatever, once there is a ring on my finger, I will never have to pretend to care about their stupid charity galas again. I am just playing the part until the ink dries on the marriage certificate. My hands shook as I exported the audio file. It was a smoking gun. Preston thought he was marrying a sweet, philanthropic angel. He was actually marrying a parasite. I dragged all the files, the bank statements, the screenshots of her abusive texts calling me a spineless ATM, and the audio clips into one master folder. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark room. I did not want chaos. I wanted absolute, undeniable clarity. And I knew exactly where I was going to deliver it. At the one event Stella believed she controlled completely. The engagement party. 2 weeks before the engagement party, I was walking back to my office building after a long morning of meetings. I stopped at a high-end coffee shop in the financial district, the kind of place where a simple latte costs $8 and everyone is wearing a tailored suit. I was waiting at the counter, staring blankly at the pastry display, my mind entirely consumed by the digital folders sitting on my desktop. I had spent 14 days meticulously organizing my sister's financial and emotional abuse into neat, chronological files. But a small, lingering part of my old self was still terrified. The conditioning runs deep. A tiny voice in my head kept whispering that I was about to destroy my own family. Nadine. I turned around. Standing near the pickup counter was the man from the jewelry store. Victor. He was wearing a different suit today, navy blue, holding a black coffee. He looked just as imposing as he had 2 weeks ago, but his eyes were relaxed. He did not look like a man who went around crushing people's wrists for a living. He looked like a successful executive on his lunch break. I blinked, genuinely surprised. "Hello," I said, my voice a little hesitant. "I am sorry, I do not think I ever got your name that day." "It is Victor," he said, stepping closer. He looked at my face, his eyes briefly scanning my left cheek where the bruise had finally faded into a faint yellow shadow. "I am glad to see you are doing better. Did your sister cause any more trouble?" I let out a harsh, dry laugh before I could stop myself. The laugh sounded exhausted. "No, she has not tried to hit me again. She is too busy playing the victim to our mother. Apparently, I am the villain of the story now." Victor nodded slowly, as if he completely understood the dynamic without me having to explain it. "People who are used to taking everything from you will always treat your boundaries as an act of war," he said quietly. He took a sip of his coffee. "You look like someone who is carrying a very heavy secret, Nadine. Are you planning something?" I looked at him. I barely knew this man, but he was the only person in the world who had ever stepped between me and my sister's rage. He was the only witness to the truth. "I am going to burn it all down," I confessed, the words slipping out of my mouth before my filter could catch them. "I am going to expose everything she has ever done to me, in front of everyone she is trying to impress." Part of me thinks it is a crazy thing to do. Victor did not look shocked. He did not tell me to be the bigger person. He did not give me a lecture about family loyalty. He just looked at me with those cold, intelligent eyes and offered a slight, approving smile. "Sometimes, burning the house down is the only way to clear the rot," he said softly. "Do not let anyone make you feel guilty for finally defending yourself. You do not owe loyalty to a parasite." He raised his coffee cup slightly in a silent toast, turned, and walked out of the shop. I watched him disappear into the crowded city sidewalk. I never saw Victor again after that day. But that brief, 5-minute conversation was the exact catalyst I needed. It completely washed away my remaining guilt. I walked back to my office with my spine straight. I was not a villain. I was just the consequences of Stella's own actions finally arriving at her doorstep. That evening, I sat at my dining table with my laptop and a glass of cheap wine, and I became the architect of my own liberation. I opened a presentation software and started building the slideshow. It had to be perfect. It could not just be an angry rant. It had to be a meticulously crafted story that Preston and his family could not possibly deny. I started with the bait. The first 2 minutes of the 5-minute video were filled with beautiful, nostalgic photographs. Pictures of Stella and me as little girls playing in the sprinklers. Photos of our family vacations. Pictures of Stella and Preston smiling on the beach, looking like the perfect couple. I layered a soft, acoustic guitar track underneath the photos. It was exactly the kind of saccharine, emotional montage you would expect a loving sister to put together for an engagement party. It was the Trojan horse. Then, right at the 2-minute and 30-second mark, the music slowly faded out. The screen faded to black. A single line of white text appeared on the screen. It read, "Behind the perfect picture." The next slide was a screenshot of a bank transfer I had made to Stella for $3,000. The memo line read, "Emergency rent so I do not get evicted." Right next to it, I placed a screenshot from Stella's social media page, posted on the exact same date, showing her holding a brand new designer handbag with the caption, "Treating myself because I deserve it." I built slide after slide of these contradictions. A text message from Stella demanding $500 for groceries, juxtaposed with a receipt from a luxury spa. And then came the audio. I embedded the voice notes I had pulled from my archives. The slides showed the audio waveforms moving as Stella's slurred, vicious voice played through the presentation. The final slide was the voice note where she called Preston's mother painfully boring and admitted she was just playing a part until she got the ring. When the presentation was finished, I exported it as a high-resolution video file and saved it to 2 separate flash drives. One was my primary, one was my backup. The next morning, I created a fake email address under the name of one of Stella's bridesmaids. I emailed the upscale event coordinator that Stella had bragged about hiring. I attached a polite, enthusiastic note. "Hello, I am the maid of honor. The family has put together a surprise video tribute for Stella and Preston. We want to play it right after the dinner speeches. Can we arrange for the projector and sound system to be ready at 9 o'clock? The coordinator replied within an hour. "Absolutely. We love surprises. Just bring the file on a flash drive and hand it to me by the DJ booth when you arrive." I closed my laptop. The trap was set. All I had to do now was walk into the lion's den and wait for it to snap shut. The engagement party was held on the rooftop of a luxury hotel downtown. It was an incredibly opulent affair. Preston's family had spared absolutely no expense. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out into a sprawling space enclosed by glass walls, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. There were floating candles in elegant glass vases, thousands of dollars worth of white orchids draping over the tables, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Waiters in black ties circulated with trays of champagne and expensive appetizers. I walked in alone. I was wearing a sleek, dark emerald green dress that fit me perfectly. And resting right against my collarbone was the vintage diamond pendant I had bought with my own money. The very necklace that had earned me a slap across the face. I scanned the room and immediately spotted Stella. She was holding court near the open bar, surrounded by Preston's wealthy aunts and cousins. She was wearing a stunning, custom white silk dress. She was throwing her head back, laughing at something Preston's father had said, playing the role of the charming, humble future daughter-in-law flawlessly. Then she saw me. Even from 30 feet away, I saw the exact moment her eyes locked onto the diamond pendant sparkling on my neck. Her perfect, radiant smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Her eyes went completely cold, flashing with a venomous rage that only I could recognize. But she could not scream at me. She could not march over and slap me. She was surrounded by her wealthy audience, completely trapped by her own fake persona. She quickly recovered her smile and aggressively turned her back to me. I did not approach her. I did not talk to my mother, who shot me a nervous, warning glare from across the room. I simply walked over to the bar, ordered a sparkling water, and observed. It was fascinating to watch them all operate, knowing what I had in my purse. At 8:45, the event coordinator, a woman with a clipboard and an earpiece, signaled that it was time for the toasts. The guests gathered around the center of the room. Preston's father gave a lovely speech welcoming Stella to their family, calling her a breath of fresh air and a truly selfless young woman. My mother gave a tearful speech about how proud she was of her beautiful daughter. While everyone was clapping and wiping away tears, I quietly slipped toward the back of the room. I found the event coordinator standing near the DJ booth. I tapped her on the shoulder. "Hi," I whispered. "I have the surprise video from the family." She smiled warmly, completely unaware of the explosive device I was handing her. "Oh, perfect timing. I will have the DJ cue it up right now." I handed her the silver flash drive. My heart was beating so hard against my ribs I thought it might crack my chest open, but my face remained perfectly, terrifyingly still. I walked back into the crowd, standing near the back, right next to the exit doors. I folded my hands in front of me and waited. The coordinator stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. The bridal party has put together a very special surprise video tribute for the happy couple. If everyone could direct their attention to the screen." A massive projector screen rolled down from the ceiling. The lights in the rooftop venue dimmed. The guests let out a collective ah. Stella leaned her head affectionately against Preston's shoulder, beaming at the screen, expecting a montage of compliments. The video started. The acoustic guitar music filled the room. The childhood photos flashed by. Stella in a Halloween costume. Stella and Preston kissing by the ocean. People chuckled and smiled. It was beautiful. Then, the 2-minute and 30-second mark hit. The music slowly faded into total silence. The screen went black. The text appeared. Behind the perfect picture. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Stella sat up straight, her smile dropping into a look of absolute confusion. She turned to look at her bridesmaids, who all looked equally bewildered. The first slide flashed onto the screen. It was massive. 10 feet tall. A screenshot of Stella's text message. "I need $3,000 right now, Nadine. Tell Mom you lost your job if you have to. Just get me the cash so I can look good for Preston's family." Next to it, the bank transfer receipt. The silence in the room became incredibly heavy. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a car crash. People started squinting at the screen, trying to process what they were reading. Then, the audio started. Stella's voice echoed through the high-end sound system. "Nadine is basically my ATM. She is too spineless to say no. I just tell her mom is sick and she empties her savings. It is pathetic." A collective gasp swept across the room. Several guests literally covered their mouths. Preston dropped his champagne glass. It shattered loudly against the marble floor, but nobody even looked at it. Preston's father, who had just called Stella a selfless woman, stood up straight, his face turning a dark shade of crimson. The slides kept coming. Relentless. Cold. Factual. A screenshot of Stella mocking Preston's sister's weight. An audio clip of Stella laughing about how easy it was to manipulate Preston because he was so desperate to be loved. And finally, the finishing blow. The audio recording about Preston's mother. Preston's mother is so painfully boring. She talked about antique rugs for an hour. These people are so stiff. But whatever, once there is a ring on my finger, I will never have to pretend to care about their stupid charity galas again. I am just playing the part until the ink dries on the marriage certificate. The video ended. The screen went black. The lights in the venue snapped back on. The silence was absolute. Pure, undeniable, deafening silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Stella was frozen, her face completely drained of color, staring at the blank screen as if it had just sentenced her to death. Her carefully constructed, expensive house of cards had just been annihilated in exactly 5 minutes. The shock paralysis broke all at once. Chaos erupted. Stella lunged forward, frantically waving her hands at the event coordinator. "Turn it off," she screamed, her voice cracking hysterically. "Turn it off, it is a lie. It is AI. It is a deepfake. Nadine made it up because she is jealous of me. But the damage was permanently done. You cannot deepfake a decade of bank transfers, and everyone in that room knew what Stella's drunk voice sounded like. The guests began turning away from her. Conversations turned hushed and frantic. People started grabbing their coats and making uncomfortable excuses, avoiding eye contact with the bride-to-be. Preston stood entirely motionless near the front table. The color was rising and falling in his face. He looked physically ill. He did not yell. He did not look at Stella. He just stared at the broken glass on the floor at his feet. My mother rushed toward me, her face twisted in absolute fury. "What have you done?" she hissed, grabbing my arm. "You have ruined your sister's life. You are a monster." I calmly reached down and peeled my mother's fingers off my arm, one by one. I looked at her, feeling absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just emptiness. "I did not ruin anything, Mom," I said softly. I just showed everyone the receipts. I stepped past her and walked steadily toward the microphone stand. I did not rush. I did not look at the ground. I stepped up, tapped the mic, and the loud thud echoed through the murmuring room, demanding their attention one last time. Stella stopped screaming and whipped her head toward me, her eyes wild like a trapped animal. I looked directly at Preston's family, then at my sister. My voice was perfectly calm, echoing clearly over the speakers. I never wanted to embarrass anyone, I said evenly. But I wanted you all to see what supporting this engagement has cost me. It cost me $30,000, my self-respect, and a slap across the face at a jewelry store 2 weeks ago because I dared to buy myself a necklace with my own money. I am done being the bank. And I am done being the punching bag. Have a wonderful evening. I set the microphone down on the stand. I turned around, picked up my small clutch purse, and walked toward the glass doors leading to the elevators. I did not look back. I did not need to see the wreckage. The music was off, the party was dead, and my debts were permanently canceled. I pressed the button for the elevator and watched the numbers light up as the car descended. The cool night air of the rooftop felt incredible against my skin. I felt lighter than I had in 32 years. Just as the elevator bell chimed and the doors began to slide open, I heard rapid footsteps echoing on the marble behind me. Someone grabbed my elbow. It was not Stella. It was not my mother. It was Preston. He looked entirely shattered. His tie was loosened, his hair was a mess, and his eyes were red. For a brief, terrifying second, my old instincts flared up. I braced myself for him to scream at me, to defend the woman he loved, to call me a liar. Instead, he let go of my arm and leaned heavily against the glass wall. I already knew, he whispered, his voice thick and exhausted. I stared at him, confused. You knew she was using you? Not everything, he admitted, shaking his head. Not the horrible things she said about my family. But the money. The lies. Things were not adding up. I caught her lying about where she was a few times. I noticed her credit cards were always maxed out despite her telling me her business was booming. I found unpaid bills shoved in the back of her closet. I thought getting engaged would calm her down. I thought if I gave her enough security, she would stop lying. I looked at him with genuine pity. You cannot fix a black hole by throwing expensive rings into it, Preston. She was never going to stop taking. He swallowed hard, looking at the floor. I know. I just did not want to admit I had been played so completely. Thank you. For what? I asked. For showing me who I was actually about to marry, he said quietly. I am calling it off. Tonight. My father is already talking to the venue manager to settle the bill. It is over. I am so sorry for what she did to you. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside the empty car and turned to face him. Do not apologize for her, Preston, I said gently. Just get out while you still can. The metal doors slid shut, sealing the chaotic rooftop and my toxic family behind me. As the elevator dropped toward the ground floor, I closed my eyes and took a deep, steady breath. I was finally, truly free. It has been exactly 3 weeks since the party. The fallout was apocalyptic. Preston canceled the wedding and blocked Stella on everything. His family's lawyers sent a terrifying cease and desist letter to my mother to ensure Stella stopped trying to contact him. Stella's entire fake life completely unraveled. She lost her luxury apartment because Preston was no longer subsidizing it, and I was no longer paying her emergency rent. She had to move back into my mother's small house. Yesterday, my phone buzzed on my desk. I looked down. It was a text message from a new, unknown number, but I knew exactly who it was. You ruined my life. You are dead to me. I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. I reached up and touched the vintage diamond pendant resting against my collarbone. I typed back exactly one sentence. No, I just stopped letting you run mine. I hit send, blocked the number, and went back to work. It's been 3 months. Half of my extended family has cut me off, saying I went too far and humiliated her publicly when I could have just dealt with it privately. But the other half thinks she got exactly what she deserved after years of financial and emotional abuse. I finally have peace, but the family group chats are still a war zone. Tell me, am I the asshole for blowing up my sister's engagement to protect myself? Thank you for watching this story. If you found yourself holding your breath during that party scene, hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join our community right now for more daily stories. Let me know your verdict in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.